If you walk into the Rose Theater at Endicott College on any given weeknight, you may find yourself in the midst of 20-something college students singing, dancing, or time warping again, and again, and again. 2 years ago, in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic, putting on a production like this turned out to be impossible. I actually wrote about it in May of 2020. The opening paragraph said this: "The night before spring break began for Endicott College, around 40 students and staff gathered in the Rose Theater for a routine rehearsal of their production of Legally Blonde. Since the end of January, the group had rehearsed for countless hours, singing, dancing, and acting together almost every night. The show was set to open 3 weeks later, at the beginning of April. But on the night of March 12th, the Legally Blonde cast knew that this rehearsal would be their last for the foreseeable future." The article held hope and uncertainty about the future, both in theater and the world as we knew it. The faculty and the students I interviewed tried to make the best out of their worst-case scenario. The musical had been canceled. Now it has been more than 2 years after the pandemic began, and it seems that maybe the theater department, referred to as main stage, has since recovered, slowly but surely.
My name's Clarke, and I am the coordinator of theater. I am the staging director for the Rocky Horror Show.
My name is Becca Keneally. I'm the chair of performing arts at Endicott College, and I am the music director for the Rocky Horror Show.
I sat down with Katie and Becca to discuss and reflect on the ways that the pandemic affected Endicott's main stage.
There was a lot of research. Schools found themselves kind of making it up on their own. There was no real guidance. Things were all new. Studies were being done, and info was coming out as the months progressed. So we would think we had a plan, and then guidelines would change as the science changed. But we kind of figured out pretty early on that being outside as much as possible was a really positive thing for not spreading the virus. People would ask, how do you sing outside, or how do you make music outside? Isn't the acoustic terrible? And I remember at the time being sort of surprised by the question, because to me the product wasn't the important part, it was the process. I didn't care what the music sounded like. I knew that people needed to sing.
We changed our fall play to a filmed production, and I did a lot of research on virtual theater. We did get to make a movie version of Polaroid Stories, which was such a learning experience, lots of fun, and we utilized a lot of spaces on campus outside so we could be distanced and unmasked. And then in the spring, when we shifted our musical, we decided to take that chance to do some devising. So while we were creating songs, etc., we could make smaller numbers so that the time got a little more allowable, as it's one person who's singing a smaller number or two people, right? We could really control like how many people were on stage, how many people were singing at a time, and how, just the structure of that a little better than a regular giant musical. Yeah, I was really nervous. That's very on brand for me. I like to obsess a little bit. And so coming back, I was obsessive about COVID, and I still kind of am to an extent. I feel like, our health and getting our shows up is really important to me. So I am always sanitizing, etc. But what I really wanted was the mindset of like, okay, we're here as the community that we've always had. We're distanced, but we need to be together. Theater and COVID and music and dance and COVID are not conducive to COVID. You can't have 10 days off every time somebody gets sick and still have a show in 4 weeks. Like it just doesn't work. So we did make it work, and I sometimes am blacking out on how we did that a little bit.
Katie talked about there being sort of this gratefulness and this grace and this sort of feeling of I'm doing the best that I can, and that's kind of a lesson that was really important for me to learn for myself, that I'm doing the best that I can. I mean, this year is hard, and maybe even harder than things were before the pandemic, because we're still a little bit there with masks and some things and some accommodations that we're making, but at the same time it feels quite normal. So I'm back to holding myself to these really high standards for performance and production. And every now and then I stop and I remind myself that pandemic or no pandemic, we're all human and we can only accomplish as much as we can accomplish in any given period of time.
I've always been told that it's okay not to have the answer, but it never really felt okay until this happened, right? I would be like, I have absolutely no clue how we're gonna do that, but there are so many people here and resources. And something also great is that it wasn't great because the poor arts community, but we had so many resources of people who weren't able to do things elsewhere, who we didn't always have access to, who could come in and spend a significant amount of time with us on composing music, on blocking and staging and projections and stuff, right? So I definitely really learned to lean on those people. Like, you should not be, art is way better when multiplied, whether or not you have to add some virtual prospects and things to that. But
today, Katie and I spent an hour or so in my office talking about details of characterization in our actors and how we could help them achieve different interpretations. And I looked at her at one point and I said, well, aren't we lucky to be doing this? You know, in that way, that feels normal. That feels like we're back, that we have the time and freedom to not be thinking about whether somebody's, not wearing their mask or whatever problem is happening that has to do with COVID. We're thinking about artistic challenges 2 weeks before a show, which is exactly what we should be thinking about. And hallelujah! I think that feels great.
Endicott College is presenting the Rocky Horror Show from April 7th through 9th. 7:30 p.m. performances, and also a 2 p.m. on the 9th. And we have all people from all over Endicott participating, majors, non-majors, minors, etc. And we are excited to showcase the classic things that we love about Rocky Horror, but we also have our own modern spins. And our message is that we want everyone at Endicott to know that there is a light on for them here, and that we are celebrating their identities and who they truly are. And our cast is really embodying that, as well as our creative team.
While COVID changed every aspect of our lives, Endicott's theater department exemplifies the ways in which the pandemic brought good to our world. Although things are still not perfect, it is clear that many have found community, passion, and love within this hard time. And to be able to reflect on 2020 and see actual, true change is surreal. Thank you to Katie Clarke and Becca Keneally and the cast of Endicott's Rocky Horror Show for their amazing voices and words. Also, thank you to Blue Dot Sessions for the music heard within this piece.